At the first Seder, which actually seems a little far away from now, we found ourselves at the table discussing and asking about the wicked child, and found ourselves reflecting on what I would say is probably too many of our young adults who have transformed their criticism and disagreements with the state of Israel to say they'd rather it not exist at this time. And we asked ourselves at the table, where did we, collective we, go wrong? We thought we taught our children to love Israel and to see how necessary it is to have a safe place for us to thrive. And what came up perhaps was, did we forget the lessons of the Shoah? Is there something broken about how we teach the Shoah to ourselves and then to the rest of the world with the rising anti-Semitism? As many of you know, I teach the Shoah curriculum. I teach the 7th graders, but included in that in the winter is a whole curriculum on the Shoah, which coincides or concludes this coming Tuesday with them reading some things at the Yom HaShoah service. And I also work closely with the Shoah committee. And so I think I have what to think about and what to continue to do research to look at that question. Is Holocaust education to be blamed for what's going on? You think so? Okay, so. Okay, so there's a lot to be thought. I did some research, and I found a article titled Holocaust Education for Today by Daniel Green, who's an adjunct professor at Northwestern, and he also is one of the authors of these readers that are often used in colleges. And he opens up that it is an existential crisis how we teach the Holocaust. 29 states, a majority of the states, do mandate Holocaust education, but it doesn't tell us exactly how many hours they are needed. And some are as little as 2 hours in a teaching year. 2 hours of teaching of the Holocaust. So it's not shocking when you do surveys of young adults that they know very little about the Holocaust. They couldn't even name one concentration camp. You ask most people of any education, name a camp, Auschwitz is going to come to the top. Okay? Could be another one, but most likely it's going to be Auschwitz, because that is sort of the one of the quintessential ones. And then interesting enough, we have Dara Horn, who's arguing that actually it was Holocaust education that increased anti-Semitism. We can argue that as well. But the gist is that we are not teaching Holocaust education enough. And also, by the way, Holocaust denial is way up. In 1994, Leonard Dinerstein wrote an influential book called Anti-Semitism in America. And he was very Pollyannish. And if you remember the 90s, we felt we had made it. Anti-Semitism was really marginalized. And he said, I don't see it's going to ever really rear its ugly head again. Yeah, there'll be a brush fire here or there, but it's never going to become the conflagration that it once was. I don't know if he's still alive. I don't know if he would eat his words at this time. But one interesting thing is, he said, yeah, there are a few loonies out there who deny the Holocaust, but just don't give them any oxygen, again, using that fire metaphor, and the fire will burn out. Well, he was wrong. And then 30 years later, Pamela Nadell publishes Anti-Semitism, an American Tradition. And so it resembles Dinerstein, but basically says we were wrong to dismiss the Holocaust deniers as lunatics. Because what happened? The internet happened. And it gave platforms for these Holocaust deniers. And they actually learned, by the way, the Holocaust deniers learned from the Nazis themselves on how to use propaganda and half-truths, relying on feelings, to rely on confirmation bias, all the things that I teach my students about the Nazi propaganda, so that people don't scrutinize it, and then they start to say, really, 1.5 million people were killed by a machine at Auschwitz? Oh, maybe a few thousand were killed there, but not 1.5 million. They sort of go to those because people can't fathom how much the Holocaust took place. Or if they really want to be anti-Semitic, they're going to say, oh, the Jews made up the Holocaust so they could get reparations, and to get the anti-Zionist piece, oh, look, they got a state out of it for pity for the Holocaust. And people start to believe these kind of things. Where do we go from this? How do we change this narrative? Well, we got to start small. Yes, we can have discussions about the higher lessons of the Holocaust. What does never again mean? What is the responsibility? But this is where Dara Horn is correct. We have to go back to anti-Semitism. We have to also go back to the facts. We need to tell teachers, or train teachers really, not tell teachers, train teachers, teach the basic facts of the Holocaust. Before you can go and talk about what it means and things like that, and I do this with my students, how did it happen? They just need to know the facts and know to accept them as facts, and they also need to be trained on how to see fakes out there, how to see false information. And that is a big skill that we need to and we are lacking in teaching our children in schools, is that kind of literacy and ability to see what is fact, what is not fact, and to do that deep thinking. And so we need to have students that know, yes, 6 million Jews were killed in the Holocaust. There was a machine-like killing and reckoning of Jews, and it happened. That many Jews were killed, and they need to know that. And yes, a little bit, anti-Semitism is different than other types of hatred. It is older. It is much more insidious. Rabbi Stecker's talked about this before, that it becomes sort of a mirror effect. If you want to hate capitalism, then Jews are capitalists. If you want to hate communism, then Jews are communists. We can't be communists and capitalists at the same time. Well, in the anti-Semitic world, we can be. And so we also need to teach ourselves, teach our children, and then the rest of the world, that anti-Semitism is a different animal. And that is in some ways how the Holocaust happened, was that, yes, with propaganda and all sorts of things like that, but that anti-Semitism was really allowed to flourish in a bad way. And so I don't know how to wrap this discussion up in a bow, because like any good history class or good website, there's going to be new questions to ask and new research ourselves. But as we prepare ourselves to transition from Passover to Yom HaShoah, I suggest that we actually append the phrase never forget, never again, with we should also be critical and thinking students of history, and never tell ourselves that anti-Semitism is done. That fire is always going to burn. We don't need to panic around it, because we continue to live. Our ancestors lived when there was anti-Semitism, but never to totally be complacent where we live. And yes, we do need the state of Israel, however flawed it may be, because anti-Semitism will never die. And we thought we were safe in Germany. We thought we were safe here in America. We thought we were safe in England. And already people are wondering, where do we need to go? And if it really gets that bad, we thankfully have the state of Israel to go to.